And I'll turn it over to you. Tiffany?
Hi, everybody. So this will be my first webinar, so it's kind of exciting. And this is the Environments for School-Age Programs. And there's my lovely picture. So I have been a formal rater with WECA since April of 2011. I've actually been to North Carolina to study with the authors and do reliability testing on several occasions. The latest was with the school age, and that was in March of 2012. And it's not doing it.
Try clicking on the screen, because I was just moving the mouse, which I think confuses it.
There we go. Okay, so what is the SACERS? The SACERS is the School Age Care Environment Rating Scale. It's part of the ERS family of tools, so you might be familiar with some of the other tools, the ITERs, the ECHRs, and the FICRs, so the infant, toddler, the early childhood, and the family. It's designed to assess group care programs for children of school age between 5 and 12 years old. It was developed and kind of thought to be an extension of ECHRs, so a lot of things that you're going to see, if you're familiar with the other rating scales, it's going to follow the same kind of patterns. And this training is meant as just an overview of the tool. You'll need to read the book to truly understand the scale. And even then, you might have questions about it. Well, I don't know where that came from. So the scale looks a little different than the other ones. It has several indicators on the page. All the other ones just have one indicator per page. The indicators are not numbered, and there's not a lot of extra notes in the book. So if you have a new book, you should go ahead and number all the indicators, and they have directions on the ERS website on how to do that. And then you should also print off all the extra notes for clarification and add them to your book. What I suggest is getting like sticker sheets, big long like page sticker sheets, and printing them off and sticking them on. So the scale basically measures 49 items, and it's broken up into subscales. So there are 7 separate subscales. There's space and furnishings, health and safety, activities, interactions, program structure, staff development, and special needs. Young Star raters, if you're going through a formal rating, will not use 2 of the items under program structure, and we also do not use the staff development. Feel free, if you're using it as a self-assessment, to go ahead and do those, but we feel that a lot of the stuff is already taken care of when we do the formal rating in other capacities. And also, if you're familiar with the other scales, there is a 7-point scale ranging from 1 to 7, so inadequate to excellent, and everything that we measure will fall somewhere in between there. There's a few frequently used terms. There are 2 or more materials or items available for children to use. So you're going to see that in a lot of the different activity areas. Variety of skills, another term that we use in the SACERS book. Many and varied is used throughout in all the different activity areas. So there should be at least 3 to 5 materials available for children, which if you have a school-age program and you're thinking 3 to 5, my children would be killing each other if there was only 3 to 5 materials. So most of the time that's not a problem. It's the varied, so making sure that you have a variety of things. And if you have multiple age groups, you should have at least 2 for each age group. Available just means that it has to be in the setting, it has to exist. And accessible, the children should be able to reach and use the materials freely. So if they're in a cabinet and I was to do a formal rating and the children never went in that cabinet, I would not consider that accessible. So the first subscale is space and furnishings. So think to yourself what kind of space you have to meet the needs of the children and staff in your care. What type of indoor space do you have? How much space do you have? Is your indoor space clean and in good repair? Do you have peeling paint? Is there natural light? Is there a feeling of homeliness in the environment? Maybe adding some plants would help. We're also looking at space for gross motor activities. Is there ample space for different kinds of activities? And where are these spaces located? Space for privacy. Do you have space set up for 1 to 3 children to kind of get away and play on their own? And can you supervise that space? We also look at room arrangement. Is there different activity areas set up and defined? The big thing to make sure is not to overcrowd the space. Make sure there's plenty of room that children and staff can move around the space but still have interesting options for them to do. Access to host facility. Do you have your own space or do you have a shared space? Do you have any difficulties in sharing that space? I know with a lot of school-age programs, you make do with what you have, and you don't necessarily have your own space. So that is a difficult one to score high on if you are renting space at a school or in a different area and it's not your own. Space to meet personal and professional needs. Do you have a phone? Is there a separate bathroom or lounge? Is there a storage space for your staff? Is there office space? Is there space for conferences? So those are all things under space and furnishings that are rated or assessed. The other part of space and furnishings, of course, is the furniture or the furnishings. So we look at child-sized tables and chairs. And child size means that the feet should touch the ground and the table is at belly height. So if you're looking at like what we see a lot in school-age programs are benches or picnic table type of tables, those usually are not child size for the majority of children because they're kind of uniformal and they're always quite big on the children. They're usually about chest height and not belly height. You also want to have individual storage, so making sure that none of the personal items touch, keeping all those germs at bay. We're also looking for some softness in the environment. So is there a cozy area? Do you have some soft furnishings? Maybe a beanbag chair or an upholstered chair, some carpets, rugs, pillows. Just be creative in the different soft furnishings that you can add, and a variety of portable and stationary gross motor equipment. So you will be able to find in your book, they list a few options for what is considered portable and stationary. Portable, of course, is your balls and frisbees and jump ropes. Stationary is your bigger climbers, but it doesn't necessarily have to be a climber. It could be a basketball hoop. It could be foursquare that you have down on the blacktop. So be creative if you don't have the space for a big climber. The big thing to remember is many of these indicators may be out of your control. And actually they probably are out of your control. So don't stress over things that you can't change.
Tiffany,
Yeah?
Just a quick question, just to clarify the variety of gross motor. So is there a specific number associated with that? Like, is it two or more means a variety, or what?
Variety just means that they can use a variety of skills. So if you have one large gross motor climber and they can use a variety of skills in using that climber, then you don't necessarily need more than that large gross motor climber for your stationary equipment. But you need both stationary and portable equipment in order to meet a lot of the indicators. So you can't just have portable equipment and you can't just have stationary. I'm hoping that answered it.
Yes, looks like it.
Okay. So health and safety is the next subscale. Most of the indicators under health and safety assess the policies that are in place, and many of these policies are already required to be licensed in the state of Wisconsin. So a formal rater may ask to see these policies, or they may ask questions around the policies. It's up to the rater on what they do. Health practices and policies are around sick children. What type of policies do you have in place? What do you do with them? They also look at staff. Are there health requirements for the staff? Maybe physicals, TB tests. And they require that physicals and TB tests be done every 2 years, which is a little bit of a change from what is required for licensing. Licensing says upon hire. Safety practices and policies. A big part of this is safety hazards. So what type of hazards do you have in your environment? Maybe things like items that say keep out of reach of children or not locked away. It may be some of the playground hazards such as open S-hooks or lack of fall zones or not enough cushioning. Inappropriate equipment, things like that. So my suggestion is always to find a good safety checklist and to complete that on a weekly basis. Attendance and departure is one of the higher scoring ones in my experience. A lot has to do with taking attendance, which most of the time I see is happening very regularly, and there's good systems in place. Meals and snacks, making sure that you are following the USDA food requirements. Lately I've been seeing that food isn't being served every 3 hours, so that's a big one, is making sure that they're offered something every 3 hours. And then cleaning the tables, making sure that that sanitary practice is in place. Personal hygiene is the last one under health and safety. This is the one and only one that looks at hand washing. So if you're used to the other scales, you see hand washing left and right in all the different areas under health and safety. So for school age, it's a little bit of a change, so it's only found under this one item. Also making sure that your bathrooms are clean, that you have necessary supplies, including tissues and toilet paper, paper towels, soap, all the basics. And always remember, if you're going to make any changes to your policies, that you contact your licensor before any of those things go into effect. Any questions?
You know, the only question we have right now is a question about somebody who doesn't have access to a printer, and so I will say that if that's the case, go ahead and please fill out the registry, the survey when you're done, and make sure you click done at the end, and then I'll email you a certificate that you'll be able to print. But that's all for now in terms of questions.
Next, we're going to look at the activity areas. So the first activity area is arts and crafts. Just make sure you have a variety of art materials. Make sure there's drawing, collage, painting, three-dimensional. all of those different mediums. And then also make sure that you include crafts. So some kind of a craft activity. Maybe it's a looming craft or beads. A lot of times I see those fuse beads, which is more of a crafty type of thing. And then provide children the opportunity to learn a new skill. This could be sewing, it could be learning a new way to paint. Just be creative. There are lots of art skills that the children have not had the opportunity to learn yet, and that would be one of the ways that you can increase your quality. Music and movement, making sure you have a variety of instruments, music, and dance props. This is one of the activity areas that you will see has to be available on a daily basis for at least 30 minutes a day. So if that's something that you're a little concerned about, just make sure that they have access to it and they can freely use the instruments for at least a half hour a day. And then offer music activities at least weekly. This doesn't have to be something extravagant. It could just be a group singing activity that you do once a week, maybe a dance activity that you do once a week. Blocks and construction is the next activity area. So you should have a variety of construction materials. This is a little different than the other tools because they're looking at blocks and construction a little different. They look at also the big unit blocks, but you can also count Legos and different connection type of things like Lincoln Logs as blocks and construction. So just having a variety that the children can use, making sure that there's enough for at least 3 children that they can build together or separately. Making sure there's an appropriate space so they're not going to get bumped or people don't have to try to walk around and not knock over their buildings. And then this is one that's in the 7s, would be allow children to use tools and softwood for construction projects. I know this one always gets people up in arms. What do you mean I have to let them use a hammer and nails? That's crazy talk. I've seen it done well, and I've seen it done not so well. So it all depends on your level of trust in the children to use hammer and nails and teaching them the correct way to use it. So this one is one that if you choose not to do it, it's not going to anyway negatively impact your score too much. It's up in the 7 area, and this would be one that would be of excellent quality when you're looking at blocks and construction. Drama and theater, making sure you have a variety of props for both boys and girls. Sometimes the drama, theater, dramatic play area is a little lacking in boy type of gender clothing or gender toys. So making sure that both of the children, boys and girls, have a variety to act out different roles. And this is highlighted in red, extending children's dramatic play. That is because this is something as a formal rater that I need to see happen. So I need to see that staff are engaged in dramatic play with the children. Let's say they start to act out a puppet show. The staff comes over and helps them set up space, set up materials, get out new materials. Just helps them in some way in their dramatic play. And then also a good way to increase dramatic play score would be to provide opportunities for some kind of a theater production, think skits and plays and things like that. Language and reading is the next activity area. Making sure you have a variety of books and language games, and making sure there's a variety for the ages of children that you have enrolled. So if you have a wide range of ages, you're going to want to make sure that you have a wide range of books that cover the developmental ability of those children. And make sure that everything is age appropriate for your children. I see a lot of books that are not appropriate, a lot of them that have violent images, that show just violence in general, think like fighting and Pokemon and swords. Some of the historical type of books also show some inappropriate things. I think the latest one that I saw was a volcano that was talking about bodies being burned to death, and I mean it wasn't anything that you wouldn't see in a school, but with 5- and 6-year-olds, that type of imagery is kind of frightening to them. So just being aware of everything that you put on your shelves. And then again, these two things are in red because these are things as a formal rater that I am listening for and looking for. Encouraging children to use reading and writing. This would be having them read instructions to a game, or writing a note to a friend, writing a sign for their dramatic play, or playing language games. This could be a game such as, I'm trying to think of a good game that's used a lot of times. I know Apples to Apples is one. They have like a junior version that would be like a language game. Charades would be another language game. Or it could just be a game that you use while you're waiting, maybe a transition language game, a rhyming game. Math and reasoning is the next activity area. Making sure there's a variety of games and activities for the children in this activity area. So is there math games, maybe dominoes, Monopoly, different games like that, but also math materials. You're thinking of shape toys or number toys. There's just such a variety. Card games would be one of the big ones that you see a lot. Checkers, Connect Four. So just having a variety of games and activities. And then again, this one's in red. Encouraging children to use math and reasoning skills. So let's say the children are setting up snack, helping them understand that one-on-one correspondence. If there's a cup here, how many more cups do we need if we have 3 more children that are going to sit down to eat snack? We have 10 cookies. Is there enough for everybody? Things like that. So encouraging them to use some kind of math and reasoning skills. Maybe helping them keep score in some kind of a game. Science and nature is the next activity area. So make sure you have a variety of science materials and equipment. So this means that besides just having science books or science puzzles and things like that, that you also have equipment. So maybe it's a magnifying glass or a microscope. And they need to have both of those in order to score high in this activity area. Also plan activities at least weekly, some kind of a science experiment, maybe a gardening activity, something that increases their awareness in science and nature. And then also encourage children to think about and find answers to nature and science questions. This is one that I need to see. So if a child's like, oh, look at that frog, I wonder where it's going. You can help the child find that answer. And it's okay if they ask you the answer and they're using you as a resource, or if you go to the computer and you're able to find that answer that way, or you have a nature book that you can find the answer to. Just encouraging them to think about and find answers to those different type of nature science questions. Cultural awareness is the last activity area. So making sure to have a variety of materials that reflect diversity. And you need at least 10 in your environment. So it could be in books, it can be in pictures, on your walls, so maybe a display that shows diversity. It could be dolls, it could be food, it could be puzzles. So be creative in how you're going to incorporate diversity in your different materials. And make sure to have at least 2 non-sexist images in the environment. So this is girls playing basketball, maybe guys cooking. I know it sounds kind of stereotypical to even talk about that, but that's what they're looking for, is the non-sexist images in the environment. So it could be a poster on the wall, or it could be in books. So those are the 2 places that I normally see that type of imagery.
Tiffany?
Yes?
So Jennifer has a question. So I'm not quite sure if I know what you mean, but she says, is this leaned more towards summer programs or after school?
Okay. I kind of understand. I think she's talking about the school age environment rating scale in general. And it is set up to assess a variety. So it's looking at both the after-school environment as well as full-day programming. There are different ways to kind of look at it, but to do a formal rating, you need at least 2 hours of continuous care in order for someone outside of the program to do a rating. But you can definitely use this as a self-assessment and do multiple different days in order to kind of get a feeling for the program. But as a formal rater, I would not be able to go in and do a rating on a program that's only an hour and a half, because you need a substantial amount of time to get a feeling for that program.
Well, and so this clarifies it a little bit. She says only because they just spent all day in school learning. So I think Jennifer's talking about the types of activities you're looking for.
Okay.
Is that right?
Okay. It is definitely meant to be an extension of the school day. So yes, this is meant for the after-school programs, definitely, because it shouldn't be that they're turned off as soon as they leave school. It's not that they need all the extra structured activities. Most of the things that they're looking for in the environment rating scale is not something that is structured group time type of activities. It's more about interacting with the children as they play. There are a few things like having science experiments or science activities once a week. That one would be could be more of a group time, but it also could be a small group activity or an individual activity. Maybe you're helping plant a garden or deciding what type of pet to get. So most of the things are not groupish and not structured that way. It's more about the interactions and how they're using the materials that are in the environment to continually increase their knowledge in the different activity areas.
Thank you.
So interactions is the next subscale. This one is always one that I like to see scoring really high, because this is why we're all in this field, is the interactions and making a difference. So the first thing we look at is greeting and departing. Basically, make sure you have a plan for an organized greeting and departing. What type of plan do you have? Do they all just kind of come in and it's a chaotic mess? Or is there an actual plan that you have in place to get the children signed in and to their respective places for the day? So whether you start with a snack time, or you start with outside time, or you start with free play, just having that plan in place, and everybody should know it. And then making sure to share information with parents at the departing time also. So this is all about the interactions. You saw in the beginning there was arrival and departure. That's all about the processes. This is all about what the staff do in that time. Staff-child interactions. This is all about responding to children in warm, supportive manner, and also allowing the children to take the lead in some things, so making sure that it's not all staff-directed and that the children are taking the lead and coming up with some of the activities and different things like that. Staff-child interactions. Oh, wrong one. I have that twice. This is supposed to be staff, one of them is supposed to be staff-child supervision. Let me look it up. Staff-child communications is what it's supposed to be instead of staff-child interaction. Sorry about that. Make sure there's frequent conversations, and then also asking many open-ended questions. You were looking for the whys and the hows and the what-ifs. So instead of the yes-no questions, or even the questions that are just reporting questions, like what is that? More of how did you make that? Or how are you going to change it? What are you going to do to it? Why did you make it that way? So there should be a combination of all the different questions and getting the children a variety of ways to express themselves, so they're not just reporting and not just saying yes, no type things, but actually getting them to think through their responses and kind of express themselves in different ways. Staff supervision. So is there careful supervision? Basically, can the staff see the children at all times? And if the children are under the age of 8, they have to be in sight at all times. A lot of times we might see an 8-year-old go off to the bathroom on their own without the direct supervision of a staff member, and that would be something that would score low in the environment rating scale. And also the staff showing constant appreciation for the children. Think of, way to go, look at you, look at how you wrote that book that you're working so hard on. Different things like that that are showing some kind of appreciation for what the children are doing and accomplishing. Discipline. Is there a written policy that's given to parents? And usually this is a licensing requirement, so I don't think I've ever seen during the ratings that they don't have a written discipline policy. And is the discipline effective? Are the staff telling them something, and does it actually make a difference in what the children are doing? So making sure that they have effective discipline. Peer interactions. Does the staff help develop peer interactions? Is there different ways that the staff increases their interactions, maybe through group games, getting them involved with one another? Does the staff sound as a sounding board? Do they help children come up with ideas and ways to resolve their conflict? Interaction between staff and parents. The big one here that often has them scoring lower is conferences at least twice a year. And this is very difficult with school age just because the school agers usually have conferences at school. So a lot of school age programs decide not to do conferences with the children, which is up to them, but it will score lower on the environment rating scale. Staff interactions. This can be scored NA or not applicable if there's only one staff present And this is all about how the staff get along with one another, how they communicate back and forth, how they share information, and if they have any planning time together. And then there's relationship between program staff and the classroom staff. This again can be marked NA if they're not in the school. So if the school-age children go to a child care center or an off-site type of place, then we're not really concerned about that. But if it does take place in the school that the children go to, there should be some kind of sharing of information, and the higher quality, the more information that will be shared and on a more regular basis.
And so back to interactions between staff and parents, there's a question. If you offer conferences for each child and parents choose not to attend, is that also scored low?
No, if you can provide documentation, just kind of like the other things, if you can provide some documentation, if we ask it and say, we offer it this time and this time, this was our newsletter that we advertised it, but no one showed up, then that's all we ask. Program structure is the next subscale. This looks at scheduling. So do you have a posted schedule? And does that posted schedule actually reflect what's going on in the classroom? And we're not talking about it has to be exact times or anything like that. We're talking, does it generally follow what is posted? And we realize that there needs to be some flexibility, and that won't be scored off at all. But if you say at 9 o'clock you have breakfast and you actually have breakfast at 8, or your outside time is at 10 but you really don't go outside till 1 o'clock, that's some big discrepancies that really don't make a whole lot of sense. But let's say you go outside a half hour early because you're afraid it's going to rain or it's going to get too hot out in the summer. That is perfectly fine if you want to switch up your outside time with your free choice time. So things like that are very, very acceptable. Other things in schedule that we look at are variety. Is there a variety of inside and outside time? Is there a variety of gross motor and fine motor? And we actually want there to be flexibility in the schedule. We want you to be able to change up things so that you can go outside earlier if it's going to be too hot out or it's going to rain. Free choice, just making sure that you allow children to choose from a variety of materials and companions, so making sure that they can choose who and what they want to play with. This should happen at least 50% of the time that the children have free choice, is that they should be able to choose what they're playing with. And then for the purposes of Youngstar, we do not assess the administrative relationship between program staff and program host or the use of community resources. Any questions?
Doesn't look like it. Nope, nothing right now.
Okay.
Oh, wait. So should we have time for schoolwork?
That is totally up to you. It's something that we do look at, and that is under number 4. I know the number, but not the actual indicator. It's under room arrangement, as odd as that sounds. And they look at, if you offer it, you don't have to, but if you offer homework time, is there a space for it? Is it conducive for learning? Do they have resources available to them? So those are the different things that you kind of look for in homework. But it's definitely not anything that's required. But if you do offer it, that it should be conducive to learning.
And here's another one. Can you mix ECHRs and SACERS in the same room at different times or together?
So the rule of thumb is the majority of children rule. I know that sounds silly, but that's how we go about doing it. So if the majority of children that you have at that time are ECHRs or 5 years and under, then, or actually 2.5 to 5 years, because if they're under 2.5, it's ITERs, then you would be using the ECHRs. If the majority of children are 6 to 12, then you would be using the SACERS. So there definitely is times that it would depend on the day which tool to use, and there's definitely times that it will depend on even the hour that the tool will be used. So let's say your school age program combines with your ECHRS classroom, and your ECHRS classroom goes until, or your school age program comes in at about 3 o'clock and gets off the bus. At 3 o'clock, the school agers kind of take over the classroom. There's more school agers than preschool age children. Then it becomes a school age environment rating scale. Now, the only time that I would actually do a rating as a formal rater in that case is if the majority stayed until at least 5. So let's say you have 10 preschoolers and then you have 12 school agers. So then it would be a school age rating, and as long as it was more than 50%, then it would stay a school age rating. But the minute that it dropped down to lower than 50%, let's say you had 5 school agers go home and you still had all your preschool children, then it would be 7 school agers, 10 preschoolers. It would now be an ECHRS classroom. And I may be confusing you more than you wanted to know. So it is definitely all going to depend. You could, if you're doing a self-assessment, you could do both of them on your program. But if you're looking at formal rating, it would be either one or the other. Does that make sense, I hope?
Yes, thanks. I guess my question, Tiffany, is so is there anything about those 2 rating scales that somebody couldn't, is there anything that somebody can't do under ECHRS that they can do under SACERS, and so they need to be aware of both of those things if they've got a mixed age classroom? I mean, they really have to know both rating scales, is that right?
Yes, they would definitely need to know both rating scales. ECHRS, you're looking at a little bit more specific when it comes to activity areas and what they require. If you have a ECHRS classroom that is set up with all the required activities under ECHRS, then it would definitely meet most of the SACERS requirements. There are a few things that you might need to add in there that you might not have because it might not be developmentally appropriate for the school agers, but it all depends on the age of the school ager. If you're looking at the school agers that are 6, they're not that far from being in ECHRS. So almost everything that is in that ECHRS classroom would be appropriate. You might need to add some chapter books or some more advanced books. You might need to add some more advanced math games. So if it is a joint classroom that's shared, you would just need to add a few extra school age options. Crafts is definitely something that you would need to add because crafts isn't something that is part of ECHRS, but you might have it anyways. I feel like I just rambled a lot, but I'm hoping it answered something.
No, it sounded good to me. It looks like that's all the questions right now.
Okay.
Oh, wait. Hang on.
That's it.
You know, it always takes people a little time to type in, so I try to wait, but not wait too long. So seeing that formal rating observations are typically in the morning, would there be a time that the observation would happen after school for a mixed preschool school-age classroom?
There definitely would be. So it all depends on where your program is kind of in the school year. In summer, a school-age rating can happen at any time. The raters try to work with the program around field trips and different things like that because we understand that school-agers need to be out and about, and we don't want to keep them confined for the 4-week window to just be at the center or the school. So we understand all of those things. So a rating may happen from 10 to 1. It may happen from 8 to 11. It may happen from 2 to 5. It all depends on the program and what works for that program schedule. You don't get to choose when it happens. You just get to say, hey, we have a field trip on Wednesdays to the library from noon to 2. During the school year, on the other hand, the big things that we ask is what time do the children get off the bus or when do they show up? And then what time does the majority of school-agers no longer the majority of school-agers? So as long as there is at least 2 hours where that happens, then you would be able to do a school-age rating, and it would happen from that time the children get off the bus, so maybe it's 3 o'clock until there's no longer more school-agers. So maybe that's 5, maybe it's 5:30. It all depends on the program again. So it's very individualized based on the program.
Great, thank you. Oh, are there screen time criteria? Are we getting to that?
There is not. I'm very disappointed in it because I feel there should be. But there is no screen time requirement in the school-age environment rating scale. So it's definitely up to your discretion. Just keep in mind the free play and that sort of thing is making sure that they're getting a variety of materials and being able to choose different things. So if you turn on a TV for half of my observation, then you're not going to score well under free play. But there really isn't any requirement saying that you can only have a half hour or 20 minutes of screen time. There's no requirements on computers. The only time it ever talks about computers is when it talks about homework, having access to computers.
Okay, and so Rena says there are many great science and math sites. And somebody else is clarifying, is that for summer too? There's no screen time limits during the summer as well?
Correct. The school-age environment rating scale does not talk about screen time. It's not even in any of the notes or wording. So screen time is not something that is even assessed in this rating scale. I know.
All right, I think that's it. We'll move on and then come back to some if we get some more questions. How about?
Okay. Well, I think we're almost done here. I didn't have any slides for the staff development because that's something that we do not assess. It's something that I didn't even read about it because it's something that I don't really look into. And then the special needs area is an entire supplementary item. So there are 6 items under that you basically just have to read through them. It's something that you really need to read through. There's no one thing that we're looking for in it. It's all about how you're modifying your environment to meet the needs. It's about, do you have the assessment plans, or are you assessing the children in some way to meet their needs, and are you helping them in communicating and doing day-to-day type of activities. So the supplementary items in the school age environment rating scale, there's 6 of them, and you just kind of have to go through and read through them. If you don't have any children with special needs, the entire thing is marked NA.
Here's a question, are child portfolios required for school agers?
So for Youngstar, it will depend. As part of the environmental rating scale, it is not required. It's not a requirement for that. But for Youngstar, it is if they are enrolled at least 50% of the time that the school agers would be able to be there. So if your school age program, the children start getting off the bus at 3 p.m. and your program closes at 6, that's 3 hours times 5 days a week, that's 15 hours. They would need to be there at least 7.5 hours, and then you would start keeping a portfolio for them. The portfolios for school agers are not as complicated, I think is a good word. It's not as complicated as the younger children. Basically, we're looking for 3 pieces of evidence. Of course, we want more. We always want more. But at a minimum, you should have at least 3 pieces of evidence, and you should have some kind of assessment in there. So there are some good assessments at our Youngstar website under school age that you would be able to utilize. Otherwise, there's other things that you would be able to use too.
And here's a specific question. Is ABC Mouse looked at as screen time? I don't know what that is. Maybe you do, Tiffany.
For school age, there's not really a requirement for screen time, so it's not really an issue. If you're looking at family or you're looking at the early childhood or infant toddler environment rating scales, it definitely would be. It would be looked at as part of your limited screen time, which is 30 minutes a week or 15 minutes a day per child.
Is that a TV show or?
It's a computer program.
Okay. Oh, for infants and toddlers, it looks like. And so you're asking if it's good or bad, and I don't think Tiffany will give a review or should or does. So
right. Well, for the infant toddler environment rating scale, the American Academy of Pediatrics says absolutely no screen time for children under the age of 2. So if you are working with children under the age of 2, your environment rating scale will definitely reflect a lower score if you choose to use a computer program for children under the age of 2.
okay. She says it helps her with assessments in reading. So.
And that's definitely something that you can choose to use, but it will score lower.
And then another question, what are the other items in the portfolios?
For school agers or for younger children? Because I might have to get it all out, but.
For school agers.
Okay, for school agers, we're just looking for 3 pieces of evidence. So it could be maybe a writing sample, it could be a drawing, it could be a skit that they wrote, any type of evidence that we're looking for. It could be maybe a self-assessment type of thing, like what do you enjoy? It could be a family enrollment form saying, okay, what is your child like at home? It could be an assessment that the teacher does on the child. This is what I see the child is doing developmentally. It could be a developmental milestone checklist. So there are a lot of different options for including in your portfolio. And of course, you could add pictures and different things like that also.
And what about goals?
Yep, goals should be in there. Goals should be updated at least monthly for children, so making sure that you have a goal sheet that's updated at least monthly. So if goals is something that you're adding in there, making sure that your goal sheet is updated monthly in order for it to count for like the intentional planning and those sorts of pieces. I think that's it.
Looks like it.
Okay. So a couple of additional resources. The ERSI notes for clarification. You can always go to the ERSI website, but we suggest you go through the Youngstar website because the ERS updates them periodically, and we choose to only update them once a year. So the most current will be on the Youngstar website, so that is the one that I suggest that you go to for reference. Caring for Our Children is also a resource that we use. It's a big book if you like books. Very wordy, but it's a great resource. You can also use the PDF version that's available free online. Free is always good. I personally like the PDF version because I can do a search and I don't have to read the entire book in order to find out information. So let's say I do a search. The latest search I probably did was about swaddling, so I just typed in the word swaddling and was able to read all the information about swaddling. But it has just about every health and safety type of thing that you can imagine in there, and it also is great to describe the rationale for things. So it talks about why we're doing things the way we're doing them. So that might be a great resource to give to parents if you're trying to make some kind of a change. You can give them maybe a print off of that saying, hey, this is why we're making this policy change. Another great resource is the Handbook for Public Playground Safety. This is another free PDF so that you can search through all of the safe playground equipment or unsafe playground equipment that you may have on your property. And you'd be amazed at how detailed it is, but it's nice because there's pictures, it describes things in detail of what we're looking for a safe playground. And then you'll also find the Wisconsin interpretations on the Youngstar website. So these are things like for the school age rating, it says that you are marked off in safety hazards if you have an unfenced playground. Wisconsin has said it's okay if your playground's unfenced. So different things like that go into the Wisconsin interpretations.
And I'll include these links when I post the recording to the website, and the handouts from this PowerPoint will also be posted, but frankly it's taking me a long time to do that in the last couple weeks, so please give me a couple of weeks to do that, but we'll make them available. And actually I can email them to everybody if that's of interest to you.
And some of you are wondering what this Youngstar website is that I keep talking about. So this is just a snapshot of the Youngstar website. And this part is the tips and tools part. So this is where you're going to find all those wonderful resources that I keep telling you about. It's going to give you links to different places, such as the registry, the ERSI website. It'll give you samples about portfolios and lesson plans. If you're really into reading, you can find out all different things about Youngstar, how it came to be. So you can spend hours on the Youngstar website if you really wanted to, just kind of looking around and reading and making sure to check it frequently, because we often will post different resources to hopefully make your life easier as a provider. And that's it. So I'm up for any questions, but it's going to be a little squeaky because I have to move my chair to turn on the light. Because I started looking at the light up.
We do have time for questions, and so we will wait for a little bit, but I'm sure nobody will be upset if we finish a little early. So here's a question: does this website, and I think you mean Christina, the Youngstar Resources website at DCF, does this website have information on the school age curricular framework for lesson plans?
I believe it does. I haven't checked it out in a while, which I should have, but didn't. But I believe it does have resources on the school age curricular framework and different things like that.
So I think Bridget's on the line. Bridget could tell us that.
She definitely could.
Should materials be rotated monthly in a school-age classroom?
There is some rotation requirement in school age, just like the other scales, and it does look at monthly. So yes, to that question, they should be rotated on a monthly basis. And it is up in the 7 level, so that's a good quality of excellent care, is rotating materials on a monthly basis.
All right, well, I'm going to take controls back from you, Tiffany, if that's okay.
No problem.
Oh, here's Bridget. So the school age curricular framework has the framework, and we are adding possible activity plans soon. Great.
Oh, I did want to mention one thing before you take control back. I don't know how many are aware, and it's not going to happen this year, and I'm not quite sure when it's going to happen. I haven't got the official word, but there is a new edition. We've been waiting and waiting. There is a new edition of the school age care and environment rating scale. So if you're really up to wanting to learn more about what the new one is, as a formal rater, we're not using it this year, and we probably will not use it, well, I know we will not use it next year. So it's going to be at least a year and a half,
Bridget,
and I'm not quite sure after that.
Bridget says 2016.
Okay. So if you are into wanting to know more about the future, what the future holds, there is a new book, and it's spiral bound, which excites everybody, I know. It did me, at least. And it's set up more like all the rest of the scales, and there's more notes in there, so there's not a whole lot of changes. I haven't really been able to dive into the new one yet, just because I haven't had the need to use it, and trying to save some space in my brain for what I actually need at this time. But it's very, very similar to the other scales in looks now.
And so that's being published now, but won't be used for Youngstar purposes till 2016, or it's not being published till 2016?
I have it in my hand, so it's published
It's
now.
published. It's out there. So if
It's
somebody's
out there.
preparing for their formal rating, they should probably use the old one, or
Correct.
what? Okay.
Yep, use the old one if you are preparing for your formal rating, because the new one will not be used until 2016. There's not a whole lot of difference between the two. I mean, there's some slight differences, but definitely use the old one until 2016. I just thought there might be some questions because some people might know about the new book. And I just wanted to let people know that we're not using it in 2015.
The CCR&Rs and the Child Care Information Center have copies of the old one if you need one, if you don't have one and aren't able to purchase one. All right. Are there any other questions? I'm just going to wait for another minute and then I'll move on to the registry survey.